everyone, and welcome to the 37th episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and we have a good bit to get into this week after SGF and the Switch 2 launch. We have Marathon's surprisingly, unsurprisingly timely delay. We have the Switch 2's third-party below expectation sales. We'll see if that was warranted or not. MindsEye's bogglingly horrific launch, the Split 2 creator going into his apology tour for the hat he wore at SGF. We'll get into. We didn't mention it last week, so we'll have to get into that now. Obviously a lot. And then for impressions, we got some wacky games, just crazy. No More Heroes from Suda51 and To a T, from the creator of Katamary Damaci, his newest title, To a T. See what I have to think in the impressions segment, which you can do by using our timestamps, labor of love, just in case you don't like what I'm saying. That's in the description, as well as a handy-dandy little email address, the pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com email address, to be precise. You can send in an email to the show, be a part of it. Why not a little question, comment, concern? I'll read it out. You can be a part of the show. And then, of course, why don't you give us a rating? A like, a comment, a subscribe, perhaps? I don't think I'm actually on any platforms where you can subscribe normally. I think you can subscribe on, like, Apple and Spotify and stuff to the feed, but, like, I don't know if that's the terminology they use. I know that's just the main YouTube terminology. Anyways, you get it. We would love some ratings, some comments, some reviews. Why not give us like 5 stars? If you have enough to give, I'd appreciate it. But that's the main stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get right into it, right? Because there's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that after SGF I have this much to get into. Was really expecting a little bit more of a laid-back show, and I'm not thinking that like any of these stories are like major bombs or anything like that, but they're all interesting in their own right, I think, and worth delving into. I think it's fair to start off with the marathon delay, following up from one of our last 2 episodes. I believe it was episode 35. We talked about Bungie, Blood in the Water at Bungie was the episode name because Marathon was not looking so hot. Specifically Marathon and Bungie in and of itself. Bungie had just been accused, or not even accused, they had straight up admitted to plagiarizing a lot of the art that was in Marathon. A lot of their the signature style that is really eye-popping for that game is just completely ripped off. Alpha tests that were going to journalists and media and just general people were pretty mixed. I would say definitely meh. Nobody was really enjoying the game. Everybody pretty much said, like, yeah, this game's okay, but, like, I'd much rather, like, wait and, like, for this game to be fixed. Like, it needs more time in the oven. Well, Sony, having learned their lesson from Concord, came out past week or so and announced a delay for Marathon, unspecified delay. They know that they will be taking several months, but they don't know exactly when the game's coming out now. This is obviously something I think that is definitely like a thing they're kind of doing to improve on the whole Concord situation. If you don't recall, Concord was their big live service flop of last year. It was absolutely horrendous. They put out a beta. It was pretty much met with even probably worse reception than Marathon. Marathon, at least people were like, well, at least Bungie's making it. It could be good. But like Concord, people were like, yeah, I mean, like, I don't see anything great about this game or bad about it. It just kind of exists. And like, just basically was one of the biggest flops possibly ever for a big budget title in video games of all time. Which is, you know, I think it makes it a historic failure and obviously something Sony doesn't want to repeat. So seeing the blood in the water, there was clearly no positive sentiment around this game. They kicked it. In Bungie's statement, they say, hey, We want to make this game the best it can possibly be, meet our vision, and address the feedback that you as the players have given us. The thing that they have said in their statement they'll be working on include improving the survival gameplay, adding better AI, more rewarding runs, and more strategic combat. They also want to double down on the Marathon universe, with improved visuals, more narrative storytelling, a darker tone, and adding social experiences to the game, including better experience for solo and duos, and proximity chat. Proximity chat was obviously like something people were saying. They said they couldn't even add that. They couldn't find a way to make it work, specifically because they considered it to be like too toxic. They're like, we really don't want people to like, call people slurs, and then we can't find a way to stop people on the internet from doing that. So we're just not going to include it. And people were like, I think that's like a huge part of this game genre is to, I guess, call people slurs. I've never played an extraction shooter, so I don't know how that works, but people were very upset about that. But a lot of changes here, some of which I think are clearly things people were not happy with the alphas. From what I was hearing, I obviously didn't play the alpha at all. I actually heard the AI was pretty good. I heard the AI was very, very difficult, and like, I would assume that's a good AI. Better AI makes me think that you're making them smarter, not like tuning them differently, but like, that's, I guess, semantics. More strategic combat, I feel like I kind of got that feeling from previews I was reading or watching. Obviously, you can always make runs more rewarding, probably tweak the gameplay and survival here and there. More narrative storytelling. I've heard that there was a narrative here. It just wasn't super deep, so I guess more of an emphasis on that. The only big thing here that I'm seeing that's like an actual feature is the proximity chat. And I don't think that would be like hard for them to implement. I think they even kind of said, like I was saying earlier, it's not like we can't do that. It's like we just don't see a way of doing it without implementing it the way we want to implement it. But they can definitely just implement it. I don't think that's an issue. So what I'm really getting into here is these are all minor tweaks. Tiny, tiny things. Twisting the screw a little bit further in. But we're not taking the whole thing apart and putting it back together again, And that's what's going to have to happen, right? I mean, like, if you're not familiar with game development, this is probably going to be a 6-month delay. 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. This is not enough time to take it apart and put it back together again. Like, this is enough time to tweak. And I think that, if you go back and the most relevant and recent example to this that I can recall is Suicide Squad, the DC live-action game that flopped horrifically last year. It was also something that they put back in the oven for another 6 months because they were like, oh, dang, people don't like this game. We need to change it. And pretty much everybody was like, there's no way that you can actually change it because this game is fundamentally rotten at its core. Like, what makes this game not fun is not something that you can go and like tweak and like, oh, well, now the shooting feels better and like the whole game is good. Like, that's not how that's gonna work. And I don't think that that's what is gonna happen here with Marathon. I think that it's more likely for that to happen with this team than Suicide Squad, because Bungie has a notable record of going back and having games that launch not super great and then fixing them. And that I'm specifically referring to Destiny. Pretty much like every expansion of Destiny that I remember hearing of, outside of like Last Light, was like it would come out and people would be like, yeah, this kind of sucks. It kind of makes the game worse here and there. I really don't like it. And then like Bungie would actually listen to the feedback of their players, tweak it, and then it would, like, by the time the next expansion would come out, I would hear like people just talk about how much they love Destiny still and how great it is. and it's the greatest game ever made, and they put thousands and thousands of hours into it. I'm like, okay, so this studio clearly does like listen to feedback and take it into consideration and implement it well. So like that's something that Bungie can do. Can they do it in a couple of months or in a handful of months? That is yet to be seen, because we don't even know if the baseline product here is something worth really being invested in yet, right? Like Destiny, we already kind of knew the foundation was good enough to entice a lot of players and kind of get them invested and involved. We don't even know if Marathon is like that yet. And we also are living in a completely different space now. Like, it's no longer like Destiny's the only live service game on the market. It's like, well, now you have every other biggest game of all time that you are now competing with. And there is, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Roblox. Like, these are all games that are taking thousands of hours from players every year, and you have to compete with that. And they are already perfect. They are already at a state where people are incredibly happy with them, and they don't have to do anything really other than what they're doing right now to continue to keep that investment. What I think that this will do, I think the biggest thing that comes from this is people will forget. I think people will forget about Marathon. I think right now there is, like I said in the last 2 episodes, blood in the water around this game. People have really negative thoughts about it, and people have really negative thoughts about Sony's live action initiative with Concord, and they have really negative thoughts about Bungie, because let's be real, like Bungie, I feel like half of my time doing this podcast has been talking about how Bungie is just absolutely not what people like to think they are. Like, they continue to mess up. Obviously, very recently, it was the art thing. And then before that, it was like, well, Sony bought them, and, they're basically, they bought something that completely flopped. Like they haven't made any money off of Bungie. They put millions and millions of dollars into them, just keeping them afloat, because, like, I think Bungie was likely about to go under if it wasn't for somebody buying them, because Destiny wasn't making any money. It hadn't been making money for a long time. I think they were kind of running on fumes and took an acquisition, for a reason. And obviously that acquisition came with a lot of strings, or not a lot of strings really, a lot of no strings, a lot of freedom that Sony took away because they basically were like, yeah, this studio is so poorly run, there is no way we can let you guys just do whatever you want still. So I think Bungie, there's just so many reasons that you can look at this and be like, there is no way Marathon's coming out okay. The discourse around every element of this game is just either mediocre or negative right now. And the wonderful thing, really the scary thing, I would say, the scariest thing about the internet is that people will forget some horrible thing you did if you just give them a couple months. Like, you just give them like 2 or 3 months, and you might as well never have done that. I feel like every time I see like a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer, like, I don't know, do something really, really abhorrent, and then they just like come back in like a month and a half, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I don't even remember what the frick he did, so I kept watching him. It's like, that's crazy. That's crazy. So like that's the internet with everything though. And so this is, I think, the biggest boon you're going to be getting from this is not the tweaking, not the addition of proximity chat that could have been put in a month or so, after the game launched or whatever like that. You are getting a boon of nobody remembers that this game was going to die. And now they are willing to give it a second chance, and we won't have horrible PR surrounding a newly released Sony live service game that was one of the biggest flops of all time. We won't have, like, horrible PR around us plagiarizing art. We won't have all this other bullcrap that people just want to, like, point and laugh at us for. and not want to play the game. So whether this is going to actually work out or not, bro, I don't know. Like, I would highly think no. like to be quite frank, I'm leaning towards, like, I don't think this is going to matter. I think this game is still going to be not great. And, prove me wrong. I would be happy if Marathon was a great game and, people want to spend $40 to buy Marathon and play it, and maybe there's a lot there that people will love. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't play the alpha, and I haven't played whatever Bungie intends to put out in a few months when they've made all these tweaks that maybe will save the game. Like, I don't know. But right now, I see this as like a desperate attempt to get people to forget about the controversy surrounding the game, and I think it's honestly smart. Like, if I was Sony, I would 100% punt this game. Because we learned with Concord, that doesn't work, or it does not work to just continue to put the game out, even though it's like, well, it's ready, and, like, hopefully there will be an audience there when we release it. Like, no, like, you need to make sure it is ready, and, like, the PR behind it is ready to go, and, like, people don't want it to die. Like, that should be a very high benchmark that you need to clear, to eventually put the game out. But anyway, I think I've kind of gone on enough about this. But yeah, I think it's still not looking great for Marathon. I think it's still not looking great for Bungie. We'll see. But I'm very down on Bungie at the moment. I think obviously a lot of people are, and that's why they're punting the game. But like I've been down on Bungie for a lot longer than a lot of other people. So, maybe I'm the worst person to ask. I don't know. But anyway, moving on. Next, following up from last week, obviously last episode, we talked about the Switch 2 and its wonderful release actually being the biggest console launch of all time with 3.5 million sales. I believe number 2 is PlayStation 5. No, PlayStation 4. I'd have to go back and check. But it's one of the PlayStations, one of the more recent PlayStations with 3.4 million sales. So just barely eked it. Just barely won that gold medal. But publishers are coming out and, quote, saying that third-party Switch 2 sales have been below our lowest expectations. Now, that is obviously a very bad statement, and it makes it sound like, what the frick is anybody putting a third-party game on Switch 2 for? And, that is something that I wanted to delve into. Now, the only outlier here really is CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. It has actually sold pretty well. It was also the only third-party Switch 2 game that I was like, I heard press about, and I was like, oh, it's supposed to be different. It's supposed to have additional features and reasons for me to want to pick it up on a Switch 2. People were really surprised and impressed with that. So it wasn't, and it's also still a fairly relevant game that I think sales continue to kind of trickle on for. So I kind of am not surprised by that. There are a lot of Switch 2 third-party games out there. Split Fiction is one that comes to mind. Yakuza 0 was ported to Switch 2 as well as one of the big, not big releases, but one of the ones they kind of, said, hey, this is going to be on the Switch 2 at launch, along with a whole host of other games. But we have a couple stats here. We have, quote, 62% of Switch 2 physical games in the U.S. and 86% in the UK were first-party games. And that's, to put an asterisk on that, that includes the Mario Kart bundle as well. So essentially, the vast majority of sales were Nintendo first-party sales. Obviously, we have, Mario Kart World, obviously being the big name there. And then the next best-selling Switch 2 game that was first-party was Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which isn't particularly surprising. I would say that's likely going to be the big one there if I had to guess, because there's not very many other recent Switch 2 games that were like that big of a deal, or Switch 1 games that were that big of a deal. But Circana later came out and they said, hey, which if you don't know Circana is basically a data company. They specifically prioritize video game sales and video game marketing and stuff like that. So they're basically the numbers guys behind sales and projections for the video game industry. And they said, hey, you guys are blowing this out of proportion. Hey, Switch 1 sales for third party, way lower than Switch 2. It's like not even close. And I saw that and I was like, a scoff, a duh. No duh, guy. You know why? It's because, one, no one bought a Switch at release. This is the biggest console launch of all time. Switch 1 isn't in the top 3, I guarantee that. So, like, I haven't looked at the list, but I guarantee you it's not in the top 3. I guarantee you it's not in the top 5. Well, I may not guarantee that, but I definitely think it's not in the top 5. It's just, you'd think it's like, the N64 or something like this. Well, the video game industry was much smaller back then, so I think those consoles probably didn't stand a chance. Video game industry is just much bigger now, so that's why the more recent consoles would have easier time breaking those numbers. But anyways, that's because the Switch 1 was coming off of a Wii U launch, which, if you don't remember, third parties were incredibly hesitant to put anything on the Switch 1 because they tried that with the Wii U. So you have to go back a while to kind of get the timeline on this. So the Wii was one of the biggest consoles ever, right? So everybody was like, oh, Wii U, that thing's going to be a big deal because the Wii is one of the biggest consoles of all time. Obviously, we now know, hindsight 2020, the Wii U is one of the biggest categorical failures of hardware ever created. And so you have all these publishers rushing to put all their games on a launch window for Switch or for Wii U, and nobody buys it because nobody buys the console. Not only that, but they'd just rather play the games. They're all like games that are on other consoles anyway. So it was like Batman Arkham City, I think, and like Assassin's Creed 3 for the Wii U. It was like you can just play those better on another console that has already been out. So it was like nobody bought those games. And then, now we get to the Switch, and everybody was like, well, we got burned on the Wii U. We're not putting freaking anything on the Switch until we figure out Nintendo's got their act together and people actually want to buy this thing. So really and now we know like the Switch 1 was like a breeding ground for indie games. Like indie games got massive sales on the Switch 1 because it was the only games you could buy outside of a Nintendo first-party game. The only games you could possibly buy were indie games. And you would go on the Switch store and they have like top 10 best-selling games or whatever, and you would see like these garbage like indie games. I'm not saying like Hades was a massive success on the Switch, but like I'm talking like freaking Jump Doodle or something, like one of those kind of games. It would just be like in the top 3 games because it was like a 5-cent game. Like it would be like a game that got discounted like 5 cents, and then like, which is ridiculous, and then like people would just like buy it by the millions because they were just starved for anything on their Switch. But anyway, now everybody's putting everything back out on the Switch too, and they're like, oh well, this is the biggest console launch of all time. We were expecting the attach rate for these third-party games to be way higher because we have so many more people. There are so many more people that are willing to buy now on this console. Nobody bought a Switch 1 at release. Now everybody's buying a Switch 2. We are expecting a lot more sales. And, I mean, like, there's obviously a lot of reasons for this. I think the obvious ones are, Switch 2, like, these games are old. Like, I've already played Split Fiction. I've already played Yakuza 0. I've already played Cyberpunk. Why do I need to play them again on the Switch 2? I don't. So I haven't felt the need to buy them at full price again on the Switch 2. What incentive is there for me to play this game on the Switch 2 versus my PlayStation 5 or my PC or whatever? Not really much. Cyberpunk is really the only one that was really touting, we have Switch 2 features that you can utilize within the game. It's a vastly improved experience that you can take on the go. That was really the only game I saw really trying to really push that. Everything else was just a port for an old game, especially something like Yakuza 0. That game came out a long time ago. Split Fiction, it's okay, well, that game came out this year, not even 6 months ago. I think that, that's understandable. But Yakuza 0, bro, that game came out, I don't even know. Didn't it come out on the PlayStation 3 or something? It was a long freaking time ago. I don't think it was PlayStation 3. I know it was PlayStation 4. So that game came out over a generation ago. What the frick are we doing here? I don't need to buy that game at full price on Switch 2. On top of Mario Kart World is the big game. Everybody's going to buy that. There's ridiculously, apparently 86% of people guaranteed in the UK likely bought Mario Kart World. 86%. Obviously they could have just bought Breath of the Wild or whatever the frick and called it a day. But I bet you bought a Switch 2. You probably also bought Mario Kart World if you're buying a first-party game at launch. So, that makes pretty good sense to me. But, the attach rate obviously super high, so they're probably pretty happy with that. Not only that, but Nintendo games are all backwards compatible. Not only backwards compatible, but apparently running better on Switch 2. Why wouldn't you just go dip into your backlog, I intend on doing that. I really don't have a need to buy that much on Switch 2 right now because I still need to play, Pikmin 4. I have a copy of Pikmin 4 sitting on my Switch, and I've just been I don't really want to play that right now. I got bigger, better things to do. And now that it's it's improved, it's optimized for Switch 2, it gives me a reason to go back to it. I really don't see why I shouldn't. I think now's the best time of all time to play Pikmin 4. So, I intend to go back and play Pikmin 4, but I didn't need to freaking buy it, and I didn't certainly need to buy a third-party game to get to, utilize my Switch 2 at all. So, there's a large backlog of games or catalog of games that people can dip into that are all first-party and all really the reason you're buying a Switch 2. Let's be freaking real. So, there's a lot of reasons why I think people would not really give a frick about third-party sales. There's honestly a couple of others that I was reading as part of this VGC article, which, by the way, shout out to VGC. I love their articles, and I pull a lot of what I research from them specifically. They make it easy. But anyway, really appreciate VGC. Go check them out if you would like a source of video game news. I do think that they do a great job. But anyway, there's several reasons. There's a lot of reasons. And so it's very interesting to see these people being it was below our lowest expectations as a publisher. And it's I understand why you thought it would be way higher, but I also look at all these reasons that are cataloged as a potential reason why they did not sell. And it's yeah. I think that obviously kind of adds up. It definitely makes sense why this is the way it is. I think it's weird for the guy at Circana. I forget his name. Forgive me. He's a very big public face for Circana, but him coming out and defending it is I don't know. I think that's it was so obvious to me very quickly that it was there's clear reasons for that. So, just thought I'd throw that out there. My 2 cents. But anyway, I think it's kind of a non-story, to be quite honest. I think I could have called that from a mile away. So, I wanted to throw in my 2 cents, though. People were talking about that like it was a big deal. So, Nintendo consoles are always, in my eyes, going to be a Nintendo console. If I'm playing third party, I'm playing on my PlayStation 5, I'm playing on my PC. I'm not playing on my freaking Switch because I can get better performance. I can get better handheld functionality on my Steam Deck. I can get, maybe not now specs wise I can't, but like, there's a lot of reasons I'd want to keep my library on my Steam Deck rather than put it on the Switch too. I don't see the need to do that. For me, Switch 2 has always been and will always be the game where I play Nintendo games. And that's it. I'm not going to be like, yo, I got to download Call of Duty on my Switch 2 so I can play it on the go. Like that's just not what I'm going to be thinking. To me, it was a total non-issue here. Following up, another big party kind of piece of news people were talking about. Kind of wanted to dabble in this just a little bit, kind of just sprinkle my analysis on it. It's not a big one, but did have people talking a little bit for reasons that I think are unfounded, personally. But Sony promises to continue to increase subscription prices as players choose higher tiers of PlayStation Extra and PlayStation Premium. People were obviously not happy because the word increase, came up. Honey, baby child, girly, let me let you know. Subscription prices are literally designed to go up. That is how they are made. That is how the business model behind them has always been and how it will continue to be. So I don't know why people are upset about this. It's kind of silly to me, to be quite honest. I know we're in an era where it's like, $80 games, like $500 Switch 2, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, I get it. I don't like spending money either. You can find a way, if you're willing to wait, if you're willing to be patient, to save money, or at least spend less money playing games and playing a lot of them, especially with these subscription services, I may add. But the way subscription services work is they come in at a very low and reasonable price. Specifically, I love to point out Game Pass. Game Pass used to be even cheaper than it is now because, of course, they increased the price. But it used to be like freaking what? $100 or something a year, or like $80 a year for Game Pass Ultimate. I can't remember, but it was something ridiculous. And that included all Xbox first-party games day one, included a bunch of other third-party games day one, and a bunch of other games that rotated in and out that weren't day one releases. Like, it was insane to not be a part of Game Pass. Here's the thing. Once you sign up for a subscription, that is literally the reason they're taking a hit when you first sign in, is you are going to be hooked. You are going to be in a position where you're just like, well, I'm going to forget about it, or it's going to be something I just continue to pay for without thinking, or, I'm just going to be like, oh, I don't really want to lose that, even though I haven't used it in the past 5 months, like, it's, it is what it is, and you're going to stick with it. Or whatever the case is, whatever your excuse is, whatever your mentality is, most people, once they break that threshold of subscribing to a service, don't leave. They stick around, and they are guaranteed revenue every month for a company who is trying to show stakeholders or stockholders that they are investors, that they are making money steadily over time, which is a huge boon for every company, right? So, all subscription services, and this includes like Netflix, your typical subscription services, Netflix, Hulu, YouTube TV, all this stuff. If you have been subscribed to a service for more than 5 years, I'm not even going to say more than 5, probably more than 2. If you've been subscribed to a subscription service for more than 2 years, you probably know they increased the price. And it's not to adjust for inflation. It is a massive hike to get the people that are already in the pot boiling. That is what they do. That's how these subscription services have always been designed. So players freaking out and being like, I can't believe it. They're saying they're going to increase the price for PlayStation Plus? That's crazy. It's like, you got to get in while the getting's good. I'm sorry, that's just how it is, you know. Like, and I take advantage of that as I do with Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, you know, when I can. But fun statistics came from this. Specifically, they showed a chart. This was all during a investor meeting, conference, whatever you want to call it, a stakeholder call. They essentially got on and started talking about pretty much everything financially. There's a couple of fun little tidbits here that came out of this, but nothing like mind-blowing to me. This was probably the closest thing that hit the zeitgeist within the gaming community. But in 2022, 17% of PlayStation Plus subscribers were on Premium and 13% were on Extra. This increased to 22 and 16% respectively in 2024. So obviously a pretty decent increase, obviously leaving the lower tiers and coming up to the higher ones. What I really see as the talking point here that is interesting to address is, why the frick are you going to Premium? Here's the thing. Okay, so if you didn't know, Extra is like the bottom basic tier. It only basically gets you your 2 or 3 games a month that Sony gives out for free, and then to keep as long as you're subscribed, and then online play. There's a couple of other minor features that you get with this, but they're not worth really even addressing. Those are your 2 big boons. Next is Extra, which gives you a massive catalog of pretty recent and interesting games. Highly recommend Extra to anybody who's considering it. It's a great deal for the games that you get. And then Premium, you get everything below, and you get classic catalogs. Now, Premium is a pretty decent jump up in price, and it is getting like maybe 2 or 3 games a month added to Premium, and you know, like, it's not games you're probably really going to be interested in playing because they are a lot older, and a lot of times they're really niche. And even I'm like, I don't give a frick about that. Like, recently it was the only game that was added this month, or they added 3 games to the PlayStation Classic catalog. Excuse me. I believe they added Deus Ex, the original Deus Ex, Twisted Metal 2 and 3, which, I mean, you're going to probably play those games for 10 minutes apiece and be like, yeah, I'm good. That is an old game that there are better versions of now somewhere out there, and you're going to never touch it again. And that, for the price, is just like not worth it at all when you look at what you're getting with Extra, and they give you like sometimes like 10 new games that are pretty good. Like, a lot of times are like pretty noteworthy games. For a fraction of the price. Now, for me, as a guy who really likes games in general, Premium is not a horrible deal for me, not because of the new games I'm getting, but because of the constant access to the entire catalog. So, like, Deus Ex doesn't just go away after a month. It stays there for a very, very long time. So, in this case, I basically get access to not just PlayStation 1 games like I was talking about just a second ago. Those just happen to be the titles they added this month. But also like PlayStation 3 titles and PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. So like PlayStation 2 and 3 is kind of where my childhood resides, and like I really enjoy going back and playing those games every once in a while. So like having access to those titles is actually a fun little perk for me. But for the vast majority of consumers, the vast majority, Premium is not worth the increase in price, and it's honestly insane that anybody is moving to it at this rate. So, like, I don't know what the frick is going on there. I don't know how they're convincing people to do that. I genuinely just see people saying, I got to sign up for a tier. Which one do I'll just get the biggest one because I get the most. That's all I can think is happening, and it kind of blows my mind. But I didn't want to talk on this for too long because I really think that the main thing here is like, what the frick are people doing going to the premium tiers, or to the premium tier? Just go to Extra. Just go to Extra and you will get so much value, so many good games, and you'll continue to have that catalog as well, as long as those games are still under that particular catalog. So totally worth it. It's like the Game Pass basically of PlayStation, and you should if you think Game Pass is a good deal, I think PlayStation Extra is certainly worth your money and time as well. And I get a lot out of my extra tier, no doubt. But anyway, so very interested there. Obviously, they're going to continue to increase the price. But because people continue to go to the higher tiers, ain't no way they're making the higher tier better. That higher tier is still going to suck. So that sucks. But it is what it is. I'm a sucker, and I'll probably still have it anyway. I actually got grandfathered into it. So when they switched to that extra and premium tier a while back, they essentially allowed you to buy as many years as you wanted in advance. So that, like you can, and you'll be in at that price. And it was like $60 it was like $60 at the time, and they were increasing the price to $120 a year. And I was like, bro, I'll just put in as much money as I can into this, and do what I can. I think I got like 5 years of PlayStation Plus Premium, not even knowing what it was really going to be at the time, because it was just so cheap to get in. I was literally getting in at half the price. So I just put in as much money as I could afford into that. I think I'm actually losing the subscription either next year or the year after. But, I have gotten my money's worth out of it for sure, especially having gotten in at 50% of the cost. So I'm pretty okay with that. But yeah, I would not recommend most people try out the premium tier at all. All right, on to our next topic. We're talking about MindsEye. MindsEye, it really caught me off guard, but we're talking about buggy launches here. We're talking of Cyberpunk 2077 persuasion, because this becomes after MindsEye incredibly buggy launch. Some screenshots from the game went viral for how like characters' faces were like melting. I genuinely didn't even know what I was looking at the first time I looked at some of those screenshots. It was kind of gnarly. But becomes the second game of all time for Sony to offer refunds to, after obviously Cyberpunk 2077. Yikes. Yeah, this is from the studio, from the producer of Grand Theft Auto. He left to create this studio, and really, I think people were kind of banking on this game being a big deal because of him specifically. Obviously a producer, not a creative director or a developer or anything like that. So, people really credited a lot of Grand Theft Auto's je ne sais quoi to this guy, though. So, people were kind of looking forward to it in a way. All of a sudden, before release, people were like, oh yeah, this game... I even heard some people being like, this is going to be like a 30 or 40 on Metacritic. And I was like, what the frick are people seeing? Like, I didn't realize... I hadn't seen any preview coverage for it or anything like that. And I was like, I don't know what the frick people are seeing to think it's going to be that big of a bomb. Like, that's a really big problem, obviously. You really have to do something really bad to get that low of a score. But lo and behold, this game is currently a 35 on PC on Metacritic and a 28 on PlayStation 5. Yikes. I don't think I've ever seen scores that low before. Obviously the game is basically being lambasted for being completely buggy, unplayable, crashing, that kind of deal. The game itself is also just not supposed to be very fun. It is an open world game with apparently nothing going on in it, with AI that walks right into your bullets. Those are kind of the main things I've been hearing about it. I haven't really looked into it very much, to be quite honest. But this is a massive problem, obviously, leading to over 100 layoffs at Builder Rocket, which is the studio that developed the game. We assume it's more, however. So the reason we say over 100, we don't have a number, is because at the moment, we don't. The reports for this was they are going into a massive layoff phase. So in the UK, which is where a majority of the employees for this studio are residing, so there's 500 employees for the company overall. 300 of them are in the UK. 200 obviously offshore in various areas. I'm not sure exactly where. But 300 of them are in the UK. UK law says that if a company is ever going to essentially lay off like 10 people, you got to give them like 2 weeks notice. Like you got to have like a consulting period with them for like 2 weeks. If it's, like 10 or 11 to 99 employees, you got to have like 30 days consultation before you lay them off. And if it's over 100, you got to have 45 days. So all we know right now is they have 45 days. So 45 days means it is legally going to be, or if they're following the code there in the UK legally, it must be over 100 people. So it could be anywhere from 100 to 300 people at the moment. Highly likely they're getting rid of 300 people, but they're definitely getting rid of over 100. So a lot of people losing their jobs at this studio. Really unfortunate, obviously. I'm sure people offshore will be let go as well. This game obviously was a massive failure. The director behind the game actually said that, recently, I read in an interview that most people at that studio aren't even working on MindsEye, or they weren't working on MindsEye before, before release. They were working on everything. And by everything, I mean that's the literal name of what they were working on, not that they were working on everything literally. But anyway, everything is like kind of an engine, kind of like Dreams in a way, where players would make content for the game. And that's why MindsEye is filled with a whole lot of nothing, is because they were intending players to make the missions for this particular game. Kind of backfired, which you can kind of expect when you launch a game with no content in it. You kind of want at least to meet a bare minimum threshold for that. So everything, obviously, is still in development. They're trying to put everything on everything. Haha. And, I can't see that being really a thing that's going to happen. After the clear mismanagement of MindsEye, I just see so little of a chance that that's actually going to be successful. Like, maybe 5 people at the studio were working on freaking MindsEye. Obviously not the case. But like very few of the percentage of their employees were working on MindsEye, and every one of their talented people were working on everything. There's no shot. I think at this point you have everybody pointing at it and saying this is clearly a studio that you can't trust. They put out a product that clearly didn't need to be put out. It is one of the worst reviewed games of all time at this point, which is funny because it's so poorly reviewed and such a massive public failure. I don't hear anybody talking about it, at all, which is so weird. But this is a weird situation in which I think this studio got a lot more recognition and a lot more bump than it needed to, obviously based off the name of the GTA producer. And not only that, but I mean, IO Interactive, the Hitman developers, are publishing it, and I'm sure they helped it out a lot too. Really odd, really odd to see this kind of thing happen, specifically the scores being this low, the absolute horrific launch being the second game of all time that Sony has offered a refund to. I mean, that really just goes to show this game is really that bad. It's really that bad, and it really caught me off guard. I think when it was initially announced, I think I even said, this may be a game to keep your eye on, which I didn't think people were really talking about it at the time. But I was like, this is a game that is from a very talented producer and from a very big name, from a very big studio, obviously Rocksteady. the makers of Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. Like, you can't get bigger than that. And he was ticketed with a lot of success for those games, or credited for a lot of success for those games. And, you know, like, if he was able to pull off any of that magic here, you were going to have a really good game. And clearly that's not the case. There's clearly a lot more that goes into a game than production, or producing, I suppose. So it's I'm actually kind of interested to see some reviews for this game now. I honestly haven't seen any. I don't know anything about this game outside of it's just doing this poorly, and obviously the pedigree behind it. Like, that's really all I know. So, very odd. I really thought I had more to say about this, to be quite honest. But yeah, the game sucks. Game sucks. People are losing their jobs. That sucks. And the scores suck. And I can't see this turning around. They did say that they had a hot fix that they were going to try to pump out and fix a lot of these issues. Good luck. I mean, like, from what it's seeming like, there is no, like, I mean, it took them years to fix Cyberpunk. I can't imagine it's going to take a week or two to fix MindsEye. If that's the case, they should have delayed it. They should have easily delayed it. So, you know, it is what it is. Final story is one that got a lot of lip service. Splitgate 2 boss apologizes for his divisive hat at Summer Games Fest. Now, this is one that I didn't even touch on it. So, last week, or 2 weeks ago, last episode, the days just run together for me now, ladies and gentlemen. It's horrible. 2 weeks ago at SGF, the creator, Ian Prolux, bro, I don't know, it's French or something. I can't pronounce that nonsense. But he's the CEO of 1047 Games, which is the creators of Splitgate and Splitgate 2. He came out and he basically had a little puff piece, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to get on the stage, and it was basically an ad. He just talked about the game, said some stuff about it, tried to say stuff that, like, the creator of Split Fiction, It Takes Two, would say. I forget that guy's name at the moment, but, you know, kind of said some unhinged stuff. And what made the rounds was he had a hat on, and it said, "Make FPS great again." It was a black hat with white text, obviously the same font as "Make America Great Again," which you may recognize as a very popular campaign piece to Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America. I have to preface that because I do have overseas listeners. Shout out to all the people in Germany listening to this podcast. But I didn't even talk about this because the last podcast was so jam-packed with stuff to say, stuff to talk about, that I was trying to fly through. Anything I didn't have to talk about, I was not talking about it. It was a 4-hour episode, and, bro, I mean, like, I was exhausted by, like, hour 1. Breakneck speed, trying to go through all the announcements, all the games that got mentioned. So, like, a press piece around Splitgate 1, or Splitgate 2, excuse me, I have no interest in talking about. It's a free-to-play game. It's currently out, I believe, so you can go play it now. Really enjoyed Splitgate 1, by the way. I only played it for, like, one evening, but I really enjoyed the time that I spent with it. And always wanted to go back to it, but never did. Anyway, this hat made people mad because it is a political statement. Kind of, I guess. Anyways, we'll get into that in a second. We'll go through the whole story. So, he essentially got a lot of backlash. People were like, "Hey, I don't appreciate you did this, wearing this hat. You suck." And he said, "Hey, I don't give a frick. I don't care. Like, I'll do whatever I want." He specifically claimed, quote unquote, that he was not making a political statement and that viewers should take his appearance, quote, at face value. Okay. He also said that, like, or during the press release or the press statement at Summer Games Fest, he said, I suppose I should mention, he was talking about how, like, he is disappointed with the state of first-person shooters
and he wanted to make Splitgate 2 something that represented like first-person shooters and how they should be now, and actually be fun and not have a battle pass and a bunch of microtransactions. Which, funny enough, like the game launched with like a $100 microtransactions package or something like that. Which, like, he even came out later and was like, I didn't actually know that was going to happen. You know, like, it was just a mess. Just a mess. So he eventually came out and said, actually, I kind of am sorry. So the game actually started taking kind of a hit in terms of publicity. It was clear that the majority of people did not find this to be very cute. They were very upset about it, and it was hurting the game. And guess when he decided to apologize? Around that time, that this clearly was a press stunt that backfired. So in his apology tour, he said, quote, and a few things here, and I'm going to read them all. These are all quotes from him because I think they're all honestly like pretty funny. Like I think it's a very very interesting state of affairs, to be quite frank. So, quote, at our biggest stage, coming out of beta, we needed something to grab attention. And the honest truth is that we tried to think of something, and this is what we came up with. Absolutely brilliant. That is, you can tell HR did not vet that statement. PR did not vet that statement. Next quote. We did not intend for this to be taken in any political way whatsoever. I'm not an idiot. Obviously, I knew there would be some level of controversy, but we really saw this as a meme that was stating our truth, which is what we want to do to improve the genre and that we are disappointed with the state of the game. He then finally said, the truth is that I am sorry, and the reason I'm sorry is because of what this has done to the community. There is division in the community, and for that, I am truly sorry. End quote. So yeah, I think, yeah, this is pretty freaking dumb. This is obviously the fact that it was just meant as a PR stunt is like, bro, like, I think that initial quote of like, we tried to come up with something and this is what we came up with is like the most telling statement you could possibly imagine. It's like, we really didn't think this through. We really didn't have very many good ideas. Yeah. You know, like pretty much just like ... I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like this is not the best, not what I would advise as a marketing stunt at all. Like if you're just trying to build buzz, like there are so many other ways to do it than try to stoke political flames. Like why do we need to do that? Like, that's a little ridiculous. Now, do I think, like, somebody wearing a Make America Great hat is, like, akin to wearing a freaking swastika or something? No, absolutely not. I think it's a little ridiculous to, like, get that angry over, like, a Make America Great hat. It's even weirder to get mad at somebody wearing a clear, like, parody of a Make America Great hat. But obviously this is going to upset people. This was clearly something that was not vetted by games, or Summer Games Fest, like the press area that he was obviously showing off the game at. There is no way that Wardrobe approved him to wear that freaking hat. Like I mean, this was in Los Angeles, California, where he did this. Obviously the audience is going to be highly liberal, highly progressive, and probably very anti-Trump. So you're not presenting, obviously he's presenting to more people than just the people at Summer Games Fest. He's presenting to everybody watching, which is millions of people. But obviously this is going to be divisive. Obviously this is going to stoke political flames, and he says it's for the community, but I think this clearly probably hurt the game. Like, I think this was probably press that really didn't help them at all. I mean, all press is good press. I mean, sometimes it is freaking bad, man. Sometimes, like, it doesn't help. It just hurts, you know? And like, obviously it gets people talking about the game. I'm talking about it right now. And maybe I did lead this conversation with, I really like Splitgate 1, you know, maybe I'll try Splitgate 2 out one day because it's freaking free, and that maybe will encourage somebody listening to this to pick up the game. Who knows? But like, brother, like there's clearly just better ways to do this. Everybody who I've heard kind of talk about this guy is like, well, this guy's kind of unhinged in general, and you can kind of see that by like him being like, I refuse to apologize, and then being like, actually, I intend to apologize right now. You know, like I think the apology kind of comes off as a little half-hearted. Not half-hearted, I guess. He just shouldn't have done it at all. If he thought it was, you know, if he didn't mean it, I guess. But like, it comes off as like him definitely taking a step down and being like, okay, yeah, we were trying to like get, you know, people riled up, and that was going to get people to talk about the game, and, you know, yada yada yada. I don't know. I think people getting mad at stuff like that is a little overblown, but I think that if you want people to like your game, you shouldn't freaking do that. Like, I don't know. I just think it's ill-advised. I think whoever came up with it, I don't know, some marketing is one of those things that like has always like confused me, I guess. Is like what works and what doesn't with marketing. Some things are obvious, some things, you know, are tried and true and tested, and some things it's like, well, we did that, and yeah, you know, it works for a lot of other people, but it didn't work for us. And it's like, this is kind of one of those things, is like, yeah, you'd think that building kind of a discourse, even if it's a negative one, would ultimately help your game. It's worked for something like Grand Theft Auto. Like, Grand Theft Auto is a massive success, high and large in part because it was a controversial game. It made news. You know, the news, CNN, Fox would talk about shooting cops and prostitutes in Grand Theft Auto and how the kids were going to be ruined by it, and how, you know, it encouraged mass shootings and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, like, obviously we now know that's probably a little overblown, but like, that is that's a really big stage that you're getting a lot of people to talk about your game, and, you know, that helped launch it into success, into one of the most successful game franchises of all time. This didn't do that, you know. Negative press sometimes isn't always the right thing to do. I think it definitely comes across as a little odd, and a little, like I said, just ill-advised. Not necessarily something that offended me, but like, clearly was going to make some people pissed off, and, you know, you probably just don't want to piss very many people off when you're trying to sell a game. So, you know, it is what it is. It definitely made the rounds on social media. It was one of the bigger talking points of the you know, past couple of weeks. So, you know, and I didn't have a chance to mention it. It was something I was going to mention in the last episode, but like I said, too jam-packed. But yeah, honestly, that's it for the news. In fact, it took me a lot less time than I was expecting. I was expecting the news to take me like freaking 2 hours or something like that. I don't know. Podcasts have been running really freaking long over the last couple of episodes, so I was just a little, you know, concerned. But anyways, on to impressions, and we have 2 very interesting ones this week. Well, I say that like every week. Every game is interesting to me because I love video games. But anyway, these 2 are definitely interesting. We have To a T from the creator of Katamary Damaci, and No More Heroes from the creator of, well, No More Heroes is really his biggest thing. Romeo is a Deadman was the game he's most recently been put on. Obviously, you know, in the most recent PlayStation Direct, that was his newest game. Anyway, both are crazy creators known for making crazy games, and I just happened to play both of them. To a T was on Game Pass, and I played No More Heroes because I recently saw Suda51 at MomoCon in Atlanta, Georgia, and I wanted to kind of have a better understanding of that because that's his biggest game. I've played several Suda51 games before, but that's his biggest one, and I've never played it. So I played it on the PC. But anyway, I think I'll start off with To a T. To a T, from the director of Katamary Damaci, Nobi Nobi Boy, and Watam. It's the next in the series. Not really a series, really, but the next in his line of games, published by Annapurna Interactive. So I had high hopes for this. I'm a very big Katamary Damaci fan, or maybe not big. Maybe that's an overstatement, but I enjoy Katamary Damaci for sure. I think it's a fun series. I have fond memories of Nobi Nobi Boy, actually. Even though it's really, in my opinion, kind of a non-game, like I played a good bit of it on the PlayStation 3 just because I had nothing else to play. For those of you that don't know, Nobi Nobi Boy is a game about you playing as Nobi Nobi Boy, which is like a long accordion-style dog guy who eats things, and he's just like on flat planes of existence, and you just run around and stretch, and that's like it. And you're trying to stretch. Like, the community is trying to stretch long enough to get to Nobi Nobi Girl, who's, like, at the end of the galaxy, and you have to stretch far enough to reach her, which, again, very wacky, weird idea. I guess I should explain Katamary Damaci. Katamary Damaci is a game where you roll things up into a ball, and eventually you roll up the entire planet. Like, very fun, interesting concept. Watam is... I also played Watam. And I'm not even gonna lie here. I played with Tom. I don't remember what it was about. It's easily his like least interesting of the games that I've played from him. I just know it's about a green cube man who wears a hat, and that's like the most I can remember of that game. So yeah, very disappointed with Tom. But like like overall, all of his ideas are weird and wacky and kooky, and To a T is no different. I guess I should say I did play this game on day one with Game Pass, which is a huge boon. I'm very glad I was able to do that because, as we're going to get into in a bit, my opinions of this game are not very strong, unfortunately, and we're getting into why that is. But To a T is the story of Teen, which you can technically name him whatever you want, but the default name is Teen, who is a teenager, a newly christened teenager on the eve, or the morn, I should say, on the morn of his 13th birthday. And he is permanently stuck in the shape of a T. So if you're familiar with T-posing, which is just a regular person just kind of holding both of their arms straight out to the sides, that is permanently... Teen cannot move from the shape of a T. Obviously, this is like, I would assume a reference to video games, but like it's because it's a very classic video game glitch pose. A standard pose in development for a character model is to put them in a T pose. So that's, normally if a game glitches out, it will revert to the default positioning, which is T, the T pose. So that is what I assumed it was a reference to, but I honestly don't think it is. It just is that. So anyways, you're basically just doing like life simmy stuff as Teen, at least for the majority of the game. Like you'll wake up and you'll brush your teeth, you'll go to school, and then each day is segmented off into a different chapter. And those chapters are very short, maybe 15, 20 minutes, pretty speedy. And each one of those comes with, or most of those come with kind of an individual, unique mini game that you get to play. So a lot of, life simmy elements, I suppose. There's an open world. It's not very big, with coins scattered everywhere that you can pick up and use on various cosmetics. I never felt the need to do that. It was kind of useless to me, but you can do that if you'd like. Teen can also fly. He eventually gets the ability to fly like a helicopter, because he's in the shape of a T.
so he can spin really fast and start flying. This is not something that you can utilize very much in the game, but it is a mechanic. So I thought I would include that. This game is predictably wacky and crazy, given the devs' predictable or previous projects. Most of the previous games are off the wall. They're abstract. I mean, like, literally, like, Katamary Damaci is you trying to fix the universe and, like, create more planets because your dad went on, like, a drunken rage and destroyed the galaxy. It's and I already described, like, the premise of Nobi Boy. They are always off the wall and kind of insane, and, like, this is, you know, like, obviously very much still that, but, like, nowhere near to the levels that Katamari Damacy, Nobi Boy, and Watama are. This is playing itself much closer to the vest, and it really actually tries to, like, tell you a story and have, like, a message. And, like, definitely that story gets a little crazy, like, in the second half, really later than the second half. The latter half of the game is way more crazy than the first half. The first half is, like, pretty standard stuff in terms of storytelling, but, like, it's weird, and like, because it's trying to actually communicate with you and tell you a story and have themes and stuff. And I knew very little about the game going into it, because I saw the trailers and I was like, I'm sold. I'll play it, no doubt. And it's Game Pass day one. I don't even have to be monetarily invested in this. Perfecto. Like, I'm good. So I only watched, like, the 2 trailers, because there are only 2 trailers for the game before it came out. And you know, like, I started thinking, you know, because I was experiencing the game fresh, like, having no idea what it was really trying to do, and I was trying to decipher, like, what is this game? What is it trying to tell me? You know, like, what is it? And Annapurna is publishing it. They're a very artsy publisher, so, like, they clearly saw something worth saying in this game, perhaps. And you know, I started off and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like an allegory for, like, people with disabilities, because, like, you wake up every morning and you can't put on a shirt, you can't brush your teeth, you have, like, an assistant dog who follows you around and, like, helps you do various things because you can't use your arms. You're basically, like, freaking armless, you know, you're an armless child trying to brush your teeth. And so, like, you have this really long toothbrush that you have to brush your teeth with, because you still have hands that you can use, but, like, they won't bend. So, like, you know, you're brushing your teeth with this really long brush, and, like, your dog has to put your shirt on for you and, like, flush the toilet for you and, like, all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, this must be a story about, like, trying to relate to people who, like, have handicap issues and, you know, like, can't live the same way in this world that we all take for granted. Like, oh my gosh, like, how profound. And then, like, the game kept going, and it kind of focused on, like, how, like, he's like, ostracized for being a man or a teenager in a T-pose, and how everybody kind of looks at him different, and, like, people bully him and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this must be a story about, like, racism and how how, like, you know, we treat people differently, even though there's not really anything that different about them, but we still treat them differently. Like, that's so profound. Like, oh my gosh, this is such art. And, you know, retroactively thinking about that, I'm like almost embarrassed I gave the game that much credit, because, like, unfortunately, the game never reaches the heights of those profound messages that could have been an interesting way of talking about these things. I love when games try to communicate those kind of messages in a playable form, because I think it is more impactful than just seeing, like, I don't know, like, a black person being punched in a movie and you're like, oh yeah, that is kind of effed up. It's like, I'm living that experience if I'm playing the game. I'm one step closer to actually living it and being, you know, frustrated by these obstacles of racism or, you know, disability that these characters are having to go through, because I'm having to overcome them as well. Obviously in not a very as significant of a way, but, like, you know, it's closer than, again, like, watching Will Smith be like, oh, dude, I need a freaking job, and nobody's giving me a job, you know, like, that kind of deal, right? So, like, I was hoping it was going to get there, but it never did. So, like, halfway through the game, like I was saying earlier, it kind of makes this incredibly absurd turn and is like, okay, well, we're kind of just abandoning all those themes that we were talking about earlier. I hesitate to spoil it because I don't see anybody talking about this game, but I genuinely can't even recommend the game to most people. So, like, I mean, eventually you find out that T is half alien. His mom gave birth to a half T alien child. She literally, she had sex with an alien that was just the letter T. Is essentially literally the story, and like the alien race comes and makes everybody a T because they consider it the perfect shape. And I'm like, okay, like this is not, we've reached Katamary Damaci levels of crazy. Like we've gone there, okay? How are we going to tell a serious message now, though, that we have, how are we going to profoundly talk about handicap issues and racism or whatever the frick I thought it was going to be about if we're now talking about, like, this woman banging an alien letter from space and then they just come and make everybody the letter T because they are perfect? What the frick? What? Okay, like we've just gone so far beyond what could be a respectable message in those realms that there's no way that we can actually say that's what this game was trying to do. And like at the end of the game just kind of settles on, oh man, aren't we all just a little bit different? Don't we all just have like a little something really special about every one of us? And it's like, okay, that is some Sesame Street level, like, morals we're trying to talk about in this game. And I'm like, that is not worth my time. Like, it's not worth my time to invest in a game that isn't all that fun in the first place. It's a life sim game with some bare bones mini games attached to it. Not really bare bones, but like mini games that aren't necessarily your freaking driving force or factor here. And why do I want to sit through all of this, like the first half of this game that isn't that crazy, unless you're trying to tell me something? And if it's like, well, the message is this bog standard and boring, like I can't say I really care. Like I can't say it's worth experiencing that to get something that I learned when I was freaking 4. Like that's not worth my time. Probably the only thing good about this game is the soundtrack, which is very in line with the director. The director's games normally have really good soundtracks. They, like, if you go back, and I mean, I still like Katamary Damaci's theme is like one of the songs that always gets stuck in my head. Like it is so catchy, and there are some great tracks from Katamary Damaci as the series just as a whole. There's some great tracks in those games. Like same thing with like Nobi Nobi Boy. The credits song. Oh my, Freudian slip. The credits song from Nobi Nobi Boy is like also something that I think about every once in a while. It's admittedly a little bit more of a comical piece of music, but it is, still very catchy. And, this game has some great catchy musical numbers too that are unique to this game and specifically about the game. And there are issues with these too. So at the beginning and end of every chapter, you will be treated to a music video of these two notable tracks. One is about making sandwiches, and one is about being a T. Both of them very catchy, very great. I mean, I'll put them on my freaking iPod or something. They're freaking nice, right? You hear them a lot. You hear them very often, and you don't get a break either, because at the beginning of end of every chapter, that means if you continue playing the game after finishing a chapter, you will immediately be treated to another musical number back to back. So not very well paced, and like having to see them so many times really diminishes their value. I think there's like something like 8 to 13 chapters. I know that's a very big range. I forget the number of chapters. I apologize. But there's enough chapters that like I was like, we're like, I think by like chapter 2 or 3, I was like, oh, they're making me watch this every single chapter. Well, this is going to get old real fast. I was like, okay, interesting. And like it would be one thing if it was like every single time I watched it, it was like different in some way, shape, or form. And like they do attempt to do something like that, but only towards the very end of the game. And it's not a big enough payoff to make forcing me to watch these musical numbers every single time I start or end a chapter. And not only that, but these two musical numbers are both in the trailers. The part of why I thought this game was going to be so awesome was because the two trailers were these musical trailers. I thought this was going to be a musical game. I thought this was a game that was going to focus a lot on music, and I think that's always fun when games do that. And I thought that this was a game that was going to have a lot of different musical numbers. And there's just two. There's just the two that are in the trailers, and they are played over and over and over again in a way that's not very spaced out very well. So I can't really compliment the design with that at all. So that's cool. So the one reason I would possibly recommend this game to you is a game that is still a reason that I would say is like not a very well executed way, or not a very well executed thing. And you can just go read or watch the freaking trailers. Watch the trailers and you will get the exact same payoff that I did watching those watching or listening to those songs. Because they're just wacky songs that don't make any freaking sense, and they're just catchy. And it's like, okay, like it's funny, it's wacky, and that's like the appeal of this director. I get it, but like again, it just doesn't go that far. It just doesn't go that far. But anyway, given all of that, I do not see a real reason for anyone to play this game. For fans of his previous works, this game does not get wacky enough, quick enough, or even I would say wacky enough even towards the end of the game to really get what you're looking for here. The gameplay is not interesting. It is not anything groundbreaking or fun particularly. The themes don't go anywhere. So like as an art project, this really isn't anything to recommend. And the only good part of this game is the music. And it is in the trailers that you can watch readily for free, saving you. It's only like a 5-hour game, so it's like not that long. But you save you 5 hours, and it's even then the music is overdone and like not very well utilized within the game itself. So, I mean, it's so disappointing, but like that is kind of my final thoughts on this. This game is a 73 on Metacritic right now, and I kind of get it. Like this game it's not like bad, it's not like horrible. There's enough polish here and enough like interesting ideas that, I beat it, and it's 5 hours. So like I didn't feel like I wasted my life on this game, but like I definitely was like, given what I have seen from the previous work from this director, and given that like there's clearly some budget behind this one and some interesting ideas that I think could have been used well, it's a really disappointing game overall. Like this is a game, it's really unfortunate because like you can recommend a really bad game. Like I could probably say like if somebody gave me a copy of MindsEye, I'd be like at least interested to try it, right? I'd be like, okay, like it's so broken, it's so messed up. I mean, like, why not? Like, I was sure, like, I want to at least see the train wreck, right? And if a game's really, really good, obviously there's a reason to play it. This is a game that is so mid, it just does nothing that I can't imagine anybody would really be interested in. I don't think I can really recommend it to anybody. Like, it's really unfortunate. Given a guy who, like I said, I really appreciate what the guy does normally. I think his wackiness is certainly something the video games industry needs every once in a while to shake things up. We could have done better. We could have done better here is the least I can say about To a T, unfortunately. Moving on to No More Heroes from Suda51. Not his first game. Killer 7 was before this, and he had several other games that kind of took off, but No More Heroes is the first one that really kind of blew up and became more of a mainstream success. Spawned several other games. They made 2 and 3, and then there's like a spin-off game, I think, as well. So like this game clearly did well, considering none of his other games got sequels. This is like obviously the one that made them money. So yeah, this game is from the Wii, actually. Saw him at MomoCon, and I was like, I really want to kind of get in on this whole Suda51 thing. I played a lot of his games. I played Lollipop Chainsaw, or I've beaten Lollipop Chainsaw. I beat Shadows of the Danged, and then I played a little bit of Killer 7, couldn't get into it. That's another one people really like normally of his. And I want to say one or two other games of his, but I can't recall off the top of my head. But I've always thought Suda51's games have some really interesting ideas. The execution is just absolutely garbage. The gameplay in the games are always bad. I think Shadows of the Danged is probably like the opposite of that. It's like probably his funnest game to play, but like the least crazy ideas out of him by a long shot. Having met him at MomoCon, I can easily say like this guy is a rock star. Like he is very much like this game very much made me think of what I saw of him at MomoCon. He is, or in person, like he is definitely a lot of like, it makes so much sense having seen him in person, seeing this game. So I guess I'll get into it. This game, you play as Travis Touchdown. You probably heard of him before. He's kind of a recognizable video game character at this point. But Travis Touchdown, who's a wannabe pervert otaku assassin, who is tasked with beating the top 10 assassins so that he can get laid. Obviously, a very odd premise. Travis is definitely kind of like a rock star dude. He's very crazy, kind of off the walls, but also like level-headed enough to be a protagonist. I definitely enjoyed Travis Touchdown. He's definitely like certifiably bonkers, but at the same time, like I enjoyed him as a character too. The gameplay consists of your stand and beat 'em up affair. You got a light attack, a dodge, a heavy attack. There are still definitely some holdover elements in the combat from the Wii. So you're fighting with a lightsaber, and in order to like reload your lightsaber juice, you have to like shake the Wiimote. And like obviously I played on PC, so I didn't have to do that. But like Travis will like make like a jerk off kind of motion when doing that. Obviously, kind of part of Suda51's wackiness in a way. But anyway, at the end of you go through all these combat segments. At the end of these segments, you have 10 unique and interesting boss fights. This is definitely where the game shines and where I had the most fun playing it. The game is definitely insane. It's definitely over the top, and it's definitely in your face. It has a personality, and it definitely like feels like rock and roll, wrestling, like kind of otaku culture. Like all that stuff is definitely on display here, and it kind of meshes kind of well in a weird way, like in a wacky way. I definitely think games with this kind of personality and panache are not as abundant as I would like for them to be. Like, I think these kind of games deserve to have a spotlight more often. It's just difficult for a game like this to be greenlit because it's so weird. Like, it's obviously going to be more difficult for people to pick it up. But, like, I think that some of the ideas here are just so cool. Like, that's where this game survives, is its rule of cool. Like, you just tell me, literally, the premise alone is enough for me to really want to try and play this game. You tell me I'm fighting with, like, a lightsaber and stuff, like, I'm already, like, more sold. Like, there's a lot here just in premise alone that is enough for somebody to think it's really cool. The game's, like, 10 hours long, which at the time of release is probably about what most games were. Games have definitely ballooned a lot in size since then. But the problem here is the padding. If there is an issue with this game, it's 100% that. And I didn't really know that much about the in-depths of No More Heroes before playing it. I didn't realize this is how the game is structured, but boss segments are really short. Like, I spent maybe 3 to 4 hours of this game actually, like, not just fighting bosses, but, like, the lead up, like, the combat, like, hallways or whatever you want to call, leading up to the boss fighting its minions or whatever. those also, like, that was like maybe 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours of gameplay total. Like, that's the actual freaking game. And you're like, okay, like, that's cool. Well, then where does this, where's the rest of the game go? Clearly you have to, if it's 10 hours game, you have 6-7 hours of something else. It's like, well, yeah, you do. You have to do odd jobs to earn money to buy your way into each new boss fight. So in order to do that, you have to start by going and doing a mini game, which is typically an odd job, which is like picking up trash or something like that. I mean, like that, like literally like picking up and moving coconuts, picking up trash, like stuff like that, like menial tasks. And then you will eventually unlock more profitable assassin missions, which you can then grind out and get large amounts of money to then like actually get the money you need in order to go and play the mission. In order to do these, you have to drive around the open world, and you have to, which is a horrific open world. So, like, even for the time, it was a horrifically dated and like very poorly put together and like archaic open world, I would say. Like, the game just looks, the open world is horrible in a lot of ways. It looks like they didn't care about it in most instances, which is crazy because you spend a lot of time in it just driving back and forth just to start missions, because you have to go back to the mission board to get a mission, and then go to the mission, do the mission, go back to the mission board to start it again, and then go back to it again to start it. So it's like you're constantly having to do that, and this is obviously all to pad the game, because they couldn't figure out a way to try and give you better content, I guess. But like none of this is particularly fun. But, like, it never took me too long to get back into going to the boss fights. And, like it was a very speedily progressing game for what it was. And the premise and the boss fights, like, I was always like, oh, dude, I want to be number 5. Like, I got to get to the number 5 spot. Oh, I want to be number 3. I got to be the top 3 assassins. Like, I thought that premise was really fun and really cool. And I was like, just climbing that leaderboard was just a fun little, like, kind of meta game almost for me to interact with as I was progressing. And then the bosses, I always was interested, like, what is this crazy boss going to be, Like, each boss is unique and interesting and crazy and wacky. And you're like, okay, I got to see where this guy's mind puts me for, like, this new, like, this new boss. Like, one's like a superhero, one's like a crazy dominatrix chick. One's like a rival that thinks you killed her father, and like you have to have like a samurai duel with her. Like, it's like, it's always something interesting and cool that I was like, it's worth plowing through this garbage. Like, I think it's not going to take me that long, and it's kind of mindless. So why not? I'll just do it and just get it over with, and then I can get back to the good parts of the game. And I think that if I paid a full price entry back in the day to a game that was this, I'd probably be a little upset if it was, I'd be a lot more upset if it was like a 3-hour game. I'd be like, we really should have made this, we really should have padded this out. So like, I kind of get why they did it. But like, I would almost prefer a piece of the game that like allows you to skip that or something. There's just not, like, some of the mini games are kind of funny in concept. Like, picking up trash is like funny that it's even there, but like, I don't know. I just wouldn't recommend it overall to put those in there. But yeah, I can see a lot of precursor elements from Suda51's games there. Still not the best designed game. Still janky combat. But the personality is here, and it's undeniable. And it's enough interesting ideas and fun that I really enjoyed going back and trying like a Wii game. And I do want to actually continue playing this series moving forward. Like, I genuinely am going to next Steam sale, because these games are not on like modern consoles for some reason. I will be buying the No More Heroes 2, because I genuinely enjoyed it that much. The interesting thing looking back, though, is it does make me wonder, like, what the heck happened to all of his later projects, though? Because you'd think that this would be a baseline for quality, right? Like, this would be like, okay, like, we found a formula that works. Like, this is No More Heroes was clearly a success. Like, they made multiple more sequels. They revisited it decades later. It clearly had enough momentum to kind of give them a name in the industry. And, you know, like, you'd think, okay, like, this is what we know works. This is the standard of quality that we need to at least build upon. You know, they made a sequel immediately afterwards, and the sequel is actually reviewed a little bit higher. I think that the original is sitting like an 83 on Metacritic. The sequel is at an 84. So, like, it did maybe tweaked a few things and made it a little bit better, but not like crazy. It wasn't a huge jump, but still, like, clearly a well-liked game. The third one is nowhere near as well-reviewed. I think it's like a 74. But, like, that makes total sense to me because what I know of Suda51 is, like, his games continued to be jank and, like, not well developed. And, you know, you would think that you'd look at, if I was in charge of No More Heroes, I would say, okay, we now had a success, we have money, we should improve on, you know, maybe the graphics, maybe the gameplay, maybe, you know, like, hire somebody who's really good at combat design, you know, or world design or something like that. And maybe we can keep all of these really wacky ideas, but, like, we now have a budget to really make this game better. And it seems like, as far as I know, all of his games did not do that, which is like, it kind of blows my mind that, like, this level of quality just kind of flatlined. It's unfortunate, I think, that to this day, all of his games kind of seem like it's a Wii era of quality in terms of gameplay. Like, I definitely know, like, probably the most game I'm most familiar with him is Lollipop Chainsaw, and, like, that game it got even remade, and I don't think anybody bought it when it got remade, but, like, that game is undeniably not fun to play. The ideas in it are really fun and wacky, and I enjoyed them, but, like, the game itself is, like, not fun. So, like, it almost feels like the exact same game, just 10 years later. Not 10 years later. It's the same era, technically. Wii and PS3 are the same era. But, like, you know, it was a lot later. And it just seems like they didn't learn anything. And it seems like I'm still hesitant to see if they learned anything with Romeo is a Deadman, which I am, of course, still looking forward to and hope that it turns out to be really awesome. You know, because I really did enjoy No More Heroes. Honestly, I'm more excited about Suda51's work right now than I have been in a long time because I played a game that he made 20 years ago. You know, like, I'm actually excited to go back to No More Heroes 2. I'm interested to see what happened with 3 that made it the worst reviewed one by a long shot. And if I had to guess, it's probably just more No More Heroes. It's just way later and people were expecting way more. So I'm interested to see that. I'm hopefully at some point in my lifetime, I'm able to. When I run out of games to play, which God knows I never will at this rate. Speaking of which, we got lots of games coming out, right? Death Stranding 2 coming out this week, if you're listening at the time of publishing. This week. Next week, actually, we have another game coming out that I am really looking forward to talking to. In fact, I'm very excited about what I'm going to be talking about on Impressions for next week. I actually can't tell you, even if I wanted to. Wink, wink, because your boy is like media now, man. I actually got a free code to a game to do PR for it, which is like, wow. Really an honor and really a fun experience to be a part of, no doubt. It's a game I was actually looking forward to regardless, so I hope that you stay tuned for next episode so you can see what I'm talking about and maybe go through that journey with me. It depends on what I'm allowed to talk about. I guess I'll figure that out as I go. But I appreciate you sticking with me this long. This is actually a very short episode. I actually feel the need to rant a little bit about that. I feel like I have a little bit of breathing room. Last episode was 4 hours long. These episodes typically go about 2.5 to 3 hours. But I've always wanted them, ever since I went solo, to be about an hour and a half, which is fortunately where we're at. We're about an hour and a half now. So, I feel like I'm not too exhausted. My throat is not completely burnt out by the end of this, so that's wonderful. You'd be surprised how trying to keep up the pace for a one-man episode can be, how hard on your throat it can be, when you just never have to shut up because you don't want any dead air, because I want you to have a pleasant listening experience. But thank you for making it this far. Thank you very much. I hope that you are having a good day. I hope you're having a good week. I hope you play some good video games. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for listening and making this a reality for me. I really do appreciate it, and I mean that every time I say it. I wouldn't be doing it if you weren't listening, and it really does mean a lot. And I hope that we can continue this conversation next time. Bye-bye.